Welcome to the CMO Scoop. I'm your host, Lara August. I'm the CEO of Robot Creative. We've worked with thousands of what we define as very large small businesses. So we write marketing plans, provide marketing leaderships to companies on a part-time basis. So those consultants are called fractional CMOs or chief marketing officers. We have a growing network of CMOs that we place with our clients, and each of them brings their own unique background and perspective to the table. So I wanted to take advantage of that. Every month, I'll be having a conversation with one of our CMOs, and we're going to cover topics and recurring themes that we see in these businesses that we work with. So today, my guest is Jeremy Roberts, Dr. Jeremy Roberts. He is a fractional CMO working with us here at Robot. He's also an entrepreneur, a professor, and a doctor. Today, we are going to be talking about rapidly scaling your business and the marketing infrastructure that you need to make that happen. So, Jeremy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm excited to be here and loving this. Love seeing all the different names and all the different locations that people are coming from. But this is going to be a good conversation. It's going to be fun. I like it.
Awesome. Yeah, Eventbrite pulls from a wide, worldwide, so that's always fun. So to start, Jeremy, can you give our audience an overview of your background?
Sure.
And I'm sure that the most pressing question for many people is, what kind of doctor are you?
So my slogan is, I can't save your life, but I can save your business, right? Haha. But no, I guess let me kind of give you my background. So I have what's called a DBA. DBA is a Doctor of Business Administration, and what that means is it's the doctoral version of an MBA. A lot of my focus and my research was on digital transformation, and there's a lot of different flavors to digital transformation. Mine was a focus on the marketer's point of view on digital transformation, and what that focuses on is 6 pillars of change. And so when you talk about 6 pillars of digital transformation, it's people, process, technology, which you've always heard before, but I've added on 3 more elements, which is data, customers, and culture. And what we'll do is I'll, hopefully later on in the podcast, we'll go through some of those, but I just wanted to highlight those quickly. Outside of that, I am a college professor. Also, I'm an adjunct. I don't teach full time, but, I do teach marketing, management, technical communications, CRM, digital marketing. But what I'm passionate about most is teaching foundational classes. I like principal classes. I do enjoy the advanced level stuff. It's a lot of theory, but the thing is, theory is one thing. Practical application is another thing. And so if I can teach foundational principles to my students, that's fully baked in real world scenarios and, entrepreneurial scenarios or things that I've done in the real world, it makes sense and it sticks. And if I can give them that strong foundation, their advanced level conversations is going to be far better.
Yeah, I love that you're staying up with the latest of everything that's happening from an educational and a teaching standpoint, but also have a foot in the real world, so to speak, working with clients hands-on. I think that that's the perfect thing from an educational standpoint, but also for clients.
Thank you. Yeah. And as far as my corporate experience, I did the corporate, some of the biggest names out there, some major brands like Adobe, IBM, Axiom, Harlan Clark, Rackspace. And, I did everything from demand gen, brand strategy, product marketing, sales enablement. But what I always say, what makes a great CMO is not just being really good at marketing or a specific channel, but understanding how you do sales, products, CX, ops, and all those different things, and how they support marketing. Because the effects of what you do and what you spend support that.
Right? Absolutely. And if you just lived in the marketing department, you may not have you may not have all of that experience, but you're also an entrepreneur. So that helps you gain this wider breadth of experience. If you could talk about your entrepreneurial experience a little bit.
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, I am one of those people that started my own business when I was 19 years old. I got into concert promotions, music entertainment. I've done everything from food and beverage. I've done global consulting, starting in the US, but down in Latin America, and even as far as the Middle East. Did a 3-year stint in Saudi Arabia. But for me right now, my current focus is I'm the founder and CEO of a mobile first telehealth a startup in Latin America called Tu Teledoc. And so it's just fun and exciting. And it's just taken all my experience to do that. But it's the bug is there and the itch is there. And if I don't scratch that itch, I feel like I'm going to fall behind.
And you sleep sometimes too, right? In between all
Sometimes.
of this.
I'm a hardcore 4 hour a guy a night. I mean, 4 hours is fantastic for me. I don't know why. I catch up one day a week. I'll sleep 10 hours, but I'm typically, I function perfect on 4 hours.
It's like superhuman. I love it.
Yeah.
So,
Fuel my success, right?
right. Well, tell us a little bit about your CMO work for hire that you do also.
Sure. For the CMO work for hire, a lot of it is focused on a few different factors. So if you think about it, first one is process building, making sure that when you look at different processes, you're not repeating the same mistakes. And I'll probably say this more often in this podcast. Don't ever use the phrase, we've always done it this way. Just kill that from your vocabulary.
Hurts my ears.
Yes. Leadership development, that's a big thing, right? In order to be a great CMO, a great marketer, you have to be a great leader. Marketing is the hub and everybody revolves around what we do and how well we do it. So you got to be a great leader. Mentorship, I do a lot of mentorship with regard to my CMO for hire. I'll go in and mentor the marketing leaders and mentor marketing teams to teach them best practices specific to their business industry and needs. But then also just looking at kind of building a scalable foundation for growth. And that's really the podcast today is if you don't have the strong foundation, you can't build on something that, that's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I can't wait to dig into that. This where the rubber meets the road.
Yep, exactly.
So you do stay really busy, just to build a little bit more of a personal connection with you. What are some of your other things that you do in between sleeping your 4 hours and your other work?
So I am proud to say that I am no longer on 10 different boards and committees. I am now on 6. Yay for me.
Big improvement.
Yeah, I think hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be down to 4, hyper-focused. I've shifted my time over to things that have a meaningful impact for me. If they mean something to me and they have an impact in the community, that's what matters most. I'm still, like I said, a college professor, a speaker, educator, hanging out with my kids, watching all the cool movies that are coming out. I take them to the gym as many times as possible. And I'm actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fanatic. I like to go and get beat up. It's the ultimate chess match. So I love it.
Awesome. Very fun. All right. So let's start digging in. We want to hear more about how your doctoral thesis applies to everything we do. So tell us about some of the past industries or engagements where you've been hired specifically to scale. Let's dig into that.
So if I think about it, I've worked a lot in financial services, IT, technology, retail, healthcare, food and beverage. But a lot of it is really, similar to Robot Creative, large SMBs, right? Not startups and mom and pops, but really large SMBs who are at that tipping point of saying, I'm ready to grow, but how do I grow? I've even worked a lot with Fortune 10 and Fortune 50. Let's see, 3 that I can think of. The first one that I'm really proud of is in healthcare. It was a healthcare company. It was the largest blood bank in Central Florida. And so that one, they were looking to build what's called a personalization and digital engagement engine or platform. And so what they want to do is hyper target their best donors, their high engagement donors. And a lot of it is building out the foundation, right? Do I have the right processes to be able to find those people? Do I have the right segmentation modeling? Do I have the right tools and technologies? Am I segmenting and giving the right message to the right people? And by doing that, they're able to increase their engagement. And with that, increased engagement means more blood donations. More blood donations means helping people, right? Second one, I would say a big retail brand out of the Midwest. That was a fun one. They're a quirky brand, and they also had segmentation issues. Typically when you're a retail brand, you say, I want to target women. I want to target men. Well, if you think about it, women don't buy clothes just for themselves. they buy clothes for their husbands or boyfriends or men in their life. So you have to target them with specific messaging, right? They can also buy for their kids. And so it's one of those things to where we talked about smart segmentation or even predictive modeling. And so some of the cool stuff is really going in and looking at the basics. And this is why I also love Robot Creative is everything's done with basic data that dictates what the approach should be. And so you use that data modeling to say, here is what people are doing, and here's the best next predictive thing that they're going to do. And that's how you start to figure it out. And if you build out these tools right and use the right data models, you can be able to create change, which is
yeah. And this recurring theme that we see when we work with these, again, that differentiator being very large small businesses, when they're just starting out, when they're either in startup mode or if they're still just literally smaller in size, smaller in terms of revenue, smaller in terms of customer count, they don't have as much data. So the data management isn't as big of a challenge. But when they're really increasing in size, kind of right on the precipice between like the small and mid-sized company and trying to make that leap. It's so interesting. We've done this research to uncover that like 80% of those businesses don't have a marketing team. Mm-hmm. And that's a shockingly large number when you think about their intention to scale. So if you don't have a marketing team, you don't have the systems, you don't have the process, you probably don't have the data integrity. And so I'm sure we're going to dig deeper into every one of those things during this episode. But for anybody that's listening that is like a small to mid-sized company, really considering, do you have the team and the infrastructure in place, as we speak through this and give specific examples about really owning that first party data and those contact lists that you have and making sure it's clean and making sure it's segmented and making sure you have it in those systems. So you've mentioned a couple great examples. You've also worked in.
Example.
Oh, awesome.
I got a great third example that reminded me as you're talking about this is it's a food and beverage industry, food and beverage customer, and they're at that precipice of like the tipping point, right? Mm-hmm. They own over a dozen bars, but the thing is they're at that point to where they're going to grow. They're probably going to double in size over the next few years, and they need to scale. And at that point to where it's like, where do you scale? Do you scale up or are you going to scale down? And scaling down means you're repeating the same bad processes over and over to where you won't be able to scale, and all of a sudden you're going to hit that point and everything is going to fall apart. And I think that's when it comes down to it is that was a fun project. I mean, really, it was just going through and you know what I mean? It's not saying we're going to take down everything, take down all the walls and rebuild it back. No, let's patch the holes. Let's fix this. Let's move this drywall back another foot.
Take what's working and work with it, right? Yeah. Like we're not usually brought in to deconstruct everything and throw everything out. Usually it's to identify what's working and where the quickest wins are going to be. So this is kind of a perfect seg into, when you're brought in, how do you help these businesses assess their current state and kind of identify what needs to be done? Like how do you, you're let loose on a new business, how do you dig in?
You know what? To think about it, I think it's that starting with that concept of intent versus reality. You know what I mean? Living in reality, because you want to work with people who want to grow, right? You want to work with people that want to be able to scale their level of chaos. You want to work with companies that have that reality check and be able to. You want to ask those questions like, what's working, what's broken, what's not working, and you want to be able to listen. You want to be able to find those disconnects. And the first thing that I want to do is when I go in and I brought in. I don't talk, I listen. I listen for a long time, even if it takes me a whole month to listen, and I listen in meetings and I see engagements and I see interactions. I want to see what's happening. I want to see where those efficiency centers are, right? And when you think about what's an efficiency center is basically saying you have all these processes, but within those processes are little micro changes that you can make. And those micro changes don't have an ROI attached just to it, but the collective use of those efficiencies create a very tangible ROI. And sometimes you don't see it unless you listen. And so I sit there and I listen and I look at the data and I look at the real data and I think, does that data actually match what they're saying or not? And those disconnects are sometimes so glaringly obvious.
And they sometimes need that outside perspective, right? I mean, we've had so many encounters with clients where they have a very strong position on something. They have kind of almost like a corporate intuitive sense of here's what's going on, and then we look at the data and we're like, I'm
this
not
doesn't
sure.
say I know
you've been saying this.
You've been saying this for years,
yeah.
But what you're saying doesn't match what the data says. So
yeah. And I like to talk about these as like, okay, when we're doing all this listening up front, like these are assumptions. Yeah. And I'm gonna take those assumptions at face value in initial conversations, but then I'm gonna pull that data, or I'm gonna ask for the data to back it up and to validate, like, yes, those assumptions are correct, because oftentimes those assumptions are, I'm not going to say they're usually glaringly wrong. Like usually they're somewhere in the neighborhood of truth, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes they're just to the left of it. And so making sure that we understand where a client thinks they are, where you think the business is. And so for any of you that are listening that are thinking about self-assessment, I think make a list of your assumptions about what you know to be true about your customers or about your revenue or about, your approach to things. Once a year, at least, looking at like what the real assumptions are for your marketing model and your business model, and giving that a sanity check with real data to back it up, I think is always really important.
I will say this, it's like if the foundation of what you have is misaligned, throwing more marketing at it won't fix it, because what it's going to do is it's going to amplify the chaos.
Absolutely.
So don't do that. Fix your foundation first, then throw a whole bunch of marketing into it.
Right? Yeah. So, and a lot of times when we talk to people, they're interested in like immediate ROI, so it's very normal. I mean, you're spending money with a consultant, they come in, you want them to quickly assess the situation, to learn everything and to listen. But then, the goal is ROI. And, can you talk about like, is there instant ROI, or how does that look?
So a lot of times it's what I call misaligned ROI, right? When you're trying to fix things, don't get caught up and constantly looking to say, did this create an ROI for that? Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for that instant gratification of the ROI, you are already in the wrong path. Don't look for that, right? Like I said, there are indirect things and there are direct things that you're going to be doing. When you fix that foundational element, there will be direct things that create direct impact to your ROI, and there will be indirect things. You have to figure out when the precipice of that happens and when it comes to that equilibrium, and then all of a sudden it's going to hit hard and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, we created all these efficiencies, we rerouted our people, we changed our technology, we changed our processes, we're using our data different, we're speaking to our customers differently, and all of a sudden it took us 3 months for it to plateau, and now all of a sudden ROI is through the roof. Right?
Yeah. It takes all of that work. And I think sometimes, again, bringing in that outside perspective can be helpful. If this is an activity that you've undertaken with several different businesses across different types of industry, you may be in a better position to understand which of these effects might be more immediate and which might be longer.
It's new eyes looking at it, be like, why are you guys doing it this way? This makes no sense at all. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're in blinders. You walk into work every day and you do what you do.
Absolutely. So what are some of those red flags? Like if you talk about going in, like what are some of the real common red flags that you see?
So the red flags, the first one is we've always done it this way, right? Another red flag is we're afraid to create change and innovate because we're afraid that things might be different and get too hard, right? we don't know if we can learn those new things. Or, well, we don't know what the customers may think. Well, have you talked to your customers?
We have a bag of tricks. You can
Yeah.
talk to your customers.
You can talk to your customers. It's like, well, the data, we don't really have enough data to tell us that it's moving in the right direction or not. Well, maybe you're not collecting data correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You're making decisions blindly. I mean, I could probably spout out, another 10 minutes worth of red flags, but the thing is, at the end of the day, I'm gonna hate to say this, but you know what your red flags are. You sit there every single day and you see them point blank in front of you. Man, I wish this was different, or I wish this was better. Write it down. Put a little
Yeah.
sticky note on your desk or on your wall, and eventually you're going to look back at it and say, "Oh my gosh, there's a pattern. Our data sucks." You know. Or
Yeah. You might
oh
just
my
be
gosh,
stuck.
yeah. You
Yeah.
might,
Or it might be a data problem. It might be a people problem. It might be a process or a tool. Like there's something
yeah, it
that's
could be
nagging.
something. Yeah, it could be a culture problem too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. So let's start by talking about people. So how do you, if you're brought in externally, go about assessing their team and helping them build a small marketing team?
So the first is fit and function, right? Making sure that you have the right people, cultural alignment, clarity of your role, willingness to grow, willingness to adapt, those kind of things.
Mhm.
If you have people that say, I've been doing the same thing for the last 15 years and I've been doing it this way, good for you. Right? It's just one of those things to where I'll give you an example. I was brought in, I'm not going to name the company. I was brought into this company as a consultant, as a digital marketing consultant. They wanted me to listen. They wanted me to improve their processes. I was there with some very green people out of college, some people that have been there for 20 years, and a few different groups of people. And my job was to listen and learn. I did a 30, 60, 90 with my VP. I came back, and after 90 days of listening, sitting in meetings, offering help. And the last thing, and I'll tell you this trick, don't walk into a new company and tell people, here's a best practice, because you're going to say, you've never been here. How do you know what our best practices are? Right? Best practice is a term that's specific to your industry, to your business, to your customer, to everything, specific to that environment. So I listened for 90 days. And afterwards, I came back with all these great suggestions, right? Same things, repeating what other people said, that those secret notes on the wall that added up to these things. And I went back to the VP and I had this full meeting with everybody in there. And before the meeting ended, like, hey, how would you like to lead all of these people? And now all of a sudden they all reported to me, right? They brought me in as from a consultant to like the person who runs this entire department, because they said, you're the only one who's sitting there listening. And so I think for me, it's, if you don't know your people and what they're capable of, it's really difficult to figure out where you can go with that.
Yeah, that's such great advice. The team probably knows. If you already, many small businesses don't have a team, but for marketing specifically, but if they do have a marketing team, start by listening. If they are repeating things over and over again, make sure that you are making a post-it note about it, that you aren't letting that just get buried from a leadership perspective. I think that's so important.
Yeah,
That
don't write on the post-it note, Carol did this, and put that on your wall. I mean, don't do that. But you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, any more thoughts about, how you work with teams, how you avoid common pitfalls or adapt to business needs?
Yeah, so I think really when I start to think about it, it's don't build your team around trends, build them around core capabilities, right? The last thing you want to do is say, hey, AI is a trend, so we're going to build a team around AI.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't do that, right? Build them around core capabilities that not only support your internal needs, but your external needs. And your external needs are two types of external: your internal external customer, which means other departments, and then your external, right? Which means the people outside of your business, which are your customers. So you want to build these teams based around those core capabilities and not that. You want people that are versatile players. You want people that can grow with your business. You want people that can grow with the needs and the changing needs, willing to go to training, willing to take an AI course on responsible AI. I mean, the last thing you want to do is just say, hey, let's just use AI now. And all of a sudden, all of your everything you do is AI and nobody has to think for themselves, which is terrible. Right. And
Yeah.
then, the last thing I would say is, you know, people who are willing to do the hard things, right? You want to find people who are willing to do hard things.
Yeah, we have learner mentality as one of our core values. And I have suggested that many small businesses that are building a marketing team, we can't have formal training programs. And even if we paid to have a very fancy formal training program developed, the technology would change and we'd be paying for it like every 6 months because so much of what we do as marketers is built around technology systems. And so I feel like the only way I can't imagine any position in a small business that's so production oriented that they wouldn't need to have an intrinsic self-motivation. They need to want to learn. They need to be excited about what they're doing. They do need to have that willingness to change and adapt. So I think screening for that in the hiring process, and if you're trying to assess an existing team, kind of asking, asking that question about like, how much have you learned, grown, evolved what you're working on over the past few years? If you're looking at a bench of employees that just really haven't, you need to ask, is there something coming from the business that is prohibiting them from learning and growing? Do they not have the time or the financial resources? But if they're not asking for that, there's a challenge right there.
100% agree.
So once you have this team that you need, it becomes this issue of establishing processes. So talk to us a little bit about your views on process.
So we'll go back to the phrase that I hate. And hate is a powerful word, but I will use this phrase of kill the phrase, we've always done it this way. Mm-hmm. Somebody says that, make them put the dollar in the jar kind of thing.
Or just even the cousin to that is, well, that's how we do it.
That's how we do it. That's
right?
Just done it.
Yeah.
Yay. Good for you. It's one of those things. It's a motivation killer. It's a motivation killer. It's an innovation killer. It's a thought killer. Just get out of that. What it does is it creates rigid thinking. It's an idea like lack of innovation. We don't want to change. And you know what? It's a cultural issue. It's a hard cultural issue.
It is. And so we've seen some companies that are, some companies that don't have any process, but some that have these rigid processes that are, all about documenting crazy processes and sticking to them. And that's equally as challenging, right?
Yeah. So I will say, when you're creating new processes, think about this idea of, start with purpose and not paperwork, right?
The goal is not to produce as many pages as possible.
Exactly. It's like create processes, for purpose. Like, are you trying to scale, right? Are you trying to create something that's repeatable and being more efficient? What is the purpose of what you're trying to do with that process? Not just to create a process for process's sake, do something that's sufficient. And if you look at it and you're like, why are we even doing this? You know what? Put it up on that part of the poster board or part of the whiteboard in that little parking lot area saying, consider killing this entire process, and put that mark next to it, make it, when you're building processes, another thing is make it usable, not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect at first, but it's got to be something that's usable, right? Simple enough to follow, this idea that it needs to be, flexible enough to evolve, something that you can build that can change and iterate over time. But it's just, you got to remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to overthink something. I mean, I don't care what kind of experience or degree you have, things will change.
Yeah, and you need to leave room for them to change. So we always look at process documentation as an activity where if I'm responsible for figuring out a process and documenting it. My goal is that the next person should be able to use that piece of paper to get 90% of the way there, maybe not 100%, but like they're going to be able to get the gist. And there's going to be another human being who's walking them through it, who's training on it, who's available to help. And then I have that second person then update the process. So what were you able to follow? What weren't you able to follow? And then I like to include the why, like why do we do certain things, not just the 10 steps, but like, and here's why we've chosen to go off in this direction, so that sometimes the why changes or sometimes the tool changes and the why breaks. And so just letting everybody know this is a living document. This isn't like, here's our playbook that we're going to use for the next 2 decades. It's here's this point in time, and let's carry it along with us and adapt as needed.
Another way to say that is like bacon iteration, right?
Yes.
You know, it's just one of those things to where, you know, go here, assess, maybe it's A versus, it's iterative testing models, right? Start here, A, B, A, B, A, B, and just keep finding your own path to that process. And once you do that, you're going to think, oh my gosh, we did this a smart way, and you'll be excited. So
yeah. And so many small businesses don't have their marketing processes documented. They don't have their overarching goals documented. They don't have basic processes documented. The scenario that I've described where one person writes it down and then the next person's able to use it, a lot of times that can't even happen because they have, one staff member and then that person quits and there might be a gap before the next one is hired, or the department may not have more than 2 people or 3 people, even in a very large small business. So there are challenges with process documentation that I want to acknowledge. But as a leader, if we aren't involved in the business saying, we recognize there's important things going on over here, please write them down. 100%.
I like that.
Please write it down. Just real simple, but write it down. I've also, I've heard, I'm 50 years old, so I'm real comfortable with writing things down, but generationally, like there's also a really big gap where people have become less and less comfortable with writing things down. So I've also learned to embrace the suggestion that you can do a quick video of someone. So say I have a process that's really important for my business and I own it, and I'm struggling with writing that down. I've been like dragging on getting the single page written. So as a business leader, if somebody were to just hold a camera up and ask me questions and interview and say, hey, you're responsible for our email marketing campaigns, walk me through how you do that. A quick video interview can get all of that information out of somebody in like one sitting.
What you could even do, and I'll take it another level, take that video, upload it in a ChatGPT and say,
it'll write.
Listen to what I just said and give me a process document for this. Boom.
Exactly.
It happens in like 10 seconds.
Exactly. Fabulous use for AI. It can polish everything up really quickly, but that extraction process can sometimes be the challenge. So I would say remove all the barriers to the extraction whenever possible.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. So we've got people that fit the roles. We're trying to capture some processes so that it doesn't walk out the door each time a person leaves, but also flexible enough that we're not stuck on the processes and unwilling to adapt and grow. Let's talk about like data. It's such a critical part of all of this. And we've already mentioned early on, like what struggles do you see in these small businesses with regard to data?
Too much noise, not enough insight. That's kind of a big one. Siloed, inconsistent data. Right?
100%.
Data that doesn't tell you anything, right? It's just data for having data's sake. It's like, look, I have this cool dashboard, but I never look at this one section. Well, great. Why do you even have that section in there? I think the big thing is notice when you look at the data and you look at what you're trying to solve for in your goals in your everyday business, right? Your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. Tell me the data that you see and the data that you don't see. Start with that, right? What data do you see that's actually giving you an answer? And then look at the data that you don't see. You're like, you know what? We don't really know anything about this. We have this huge black hole of information and we see nothing. That's a huge red flag. It's a gigantic red flag. I mean, you should be able to think, huh, are we not tracking this? Do we not know what's going on? I mean, this should be exactly what's going on. And what it all comes down to is something that I'm really proud of that Robot Creative has actually reinforced for me. It's something called a DDM approach. A DDM is a data-driven decision modeling, right? So data-driven decision modeling is the idea that you do not make a decision without data to back it.
Yeah,
right?
we're not going to use my opinion.
No, your opinion is fantastic because I'm grateful for your experience. But unless you show me the data to back it with a trend, with a data trend, it doesn't mean anything. And I will say this, and this is me as a third-party fractional CMO, right? I've worked with a lot of agencies. I've worked with a lot of different creatives and different people, and a lot of them go in and try to sell the pizzazz. And
we call it like all sizzle and no meat.
Yeah.
We're really, our industry is great at sizzle.
No, you sell the sizzle and you sell the pizzazz and the excitement of, we have this great thing, but is it backed by data? And you're like, nope, we can't find a single data point to back it. Big thumbs up, walk out the door, right? I'm just telling you that. And when I first started working with Robot, it was a huge like green flag. Is that's right? Green huge green flag. I was like, oh my gosh, we cannot speak to the client unless we have full data to back it. And I was like, bingo, big thing.
Yeah, we're really big on it. And when we think about the climate that most of our small businesses exist in, none of them have, or very, very few have full ERP systems that are tying together all aspects of their business. There's usually a combination of an accounting or software package that's separate from a CRM or a customer relationship management platform, if they even have that. A lot of them, the email marketing isn't even tied into the CRM. And so the CRM lives in sales if there's a sales team or salespeople. The accounting has a customer database. So the sales team has prospect data. The accounting has sales data. They don't necessarily, or rarely, I would say, even speak to one another. And then the marketing team has things like, maybe they have access to the CRM, but I can't even tell you how many times we've gone into small businesses and the marketing team has zero access to the CRM. It's like the first thing we ask for. And I can't tell you, we have to fight for it. It seems because, the seats are expensive. So that's justifiable. Like, yes, it's going to cost more money to get a marketing person access to that data. But how are we supposed to know who we're trying to reach or how we're trying to reach them without access to that? And the same thing with like accounting, getting these departments to talk to one another, getting systems to communicate wherever possible. A lot of times there's integrations that just aren't turned on. That's the one that always baffles me.
So I will say this, if you're going to start off and you're going to redo your data, start small.
Yeah.
Right. Start small. And then start to collaborate. Don't build in silos. Look at things that answer a specific question, right? If you build out a data point and that data point answers a specific question, keep it. If it doesn't answer a specific question and you need something else to support it, we'll add on something. If it doesn't, you don't need it.
You're so right. Yeah.
There.
Starting with a question. I love that because I see so many people trying to be helpful or useful and producing reports or producing these dashboards. And everything's data driven now. The tools are trying to be helpful. So the tools will have dashboards and the tools will have reports. You can have data coming out every direction and not really be asking or answering the business question. And what I find so fascinating is that so many times we're trying to ask a business question, and despite these endless pages of reports and all this data, we struggle to answer it, even with all of these great tools, right? So there's a challenge there. And I think you've kind of addressed like not being overwhelmed by the data that's out there and trying to show it off in report or dashboard format, but really thinking about what are we trying to answer? Can we get to the bottom of it? We don't need to see all the other stuff.
And you can use anything. You can use anything from basic Google Analytics all the way to like Adobe Analytics, which is a lot of money. I used to work there. Great tool, by the way. But I mean, get really good at using the basic data first. If you get really good at it and you outgrow it, then advance yourself. Don't get in something that's super expensive.
Right.
You can't even read yet. Well,
Yeah.
you only use 20% of it. Well, then you should be paying 20% of the cost. Right?
Exactly. And I think that a lot of times when you start to pull these reports, you also run into this challenge where the data is not cleaned up. So the data management as a base layer, it doesn't matter what tool or system you're using. If you don't have somebody whose job description includes data management, right? Within the sales department, there needs to be somebody who's responsible for keeping the contacts and the data really clean and up to date. And that is not a pleasant job for most people,
Well,
but it's so important.
I will tell you this, a trick and insight when you're hiring a data analyst and you're hiring a business analyst to look at your data, don't find somebody who'll just send you a PowerPoint with a graph. That's not your person. You
Yeah.
want somebody who can tell you a story and interpret that data and exactly what it means, right? Find that person. And if you can find that person who can stand in front of the room and tell you what that means and interpret the data, that's your person.
Yeah. Here's why it's useful, not just bleh.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk shifting gears a little bit. You've mentioned a lot about needing to have a culture of change and culture defining everything. Let's dig into that.
So when I was doing my research and my doctoral studies, I came across this fantastic YouTube video. It's called How Wolves Changed Rivers. And it's narrated by one of those British voice guys, like the National Geographic. It's about like no more than 10 minutes.
We're Americans. I know we have someone from London and someone from
Yeah.
South Africa. We're all suckers for accents, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, it's so fun.
The guy who does the narration for National Geographic. It's fantastic. But if you watch this video, How Wolves Changed Rivers, it's based on a biological concept called a trophic cascade. Now, there's different ways to change culture. You can do a groundswell, right? It's a lot of that happens in politics, right? You have a groundswell where a lot of people come together, they go and they march and they sound off and all that stuff. And you have enough people to say, make things change. Well, that doesn't happen in business.
No.
If you have a huge groundswell, the whole groundswell gets fired.
Yeah, they don't rise up saying like, here's what needs to be done.
No.
Let's transform all of our jobs. That's not
in business. Flip it, and on that flip, it starts from the apex predator, the CEO, the executive. They have to have what's called a culture of change. When you create a culture of change, that is the hub. So when you talk about the 6 pillars of digital transformation, people, process, technology, data, customers, culture right in the middle. If you do not have a culture of change, nothing else happens. Because as soon as your next quarterly business review comes out, as soon as you're low on budget, and as soon as something changes, the wind gets cold, you know what I mean? Somebody gets afraid of something, or a customer says this, you abandon your innovation, you abandon your new ideas, and you abandon all the progress you've made. And we're going to say we've always done it this way and go back to status quo. Do not do that. Put your foot down and create a culture of change. Find people who are willing to change with you, processes that can change with you, technology. You can use your legacy stuff and add on new stuff with it, right? Use new types of data, do your DDM approach, and then look at your customers. And the example I give about customers is during the pandemic, here in San Antonio, we have a lot of Mexican restaurants, right? Fantastic food, by the way.
Yes.
If the Mexican restaurant can change the way they serve food by sending the waitresses outside to go and knock on your window and get your order and bring your food out to you, you can change in your business too. The Mexican restaurant shouldn't be the only company that can change. So the thing is, it starts with you. If you are the leader, I am challenging you to be able to create a culture of change in your business. And it has to be from the tops down. It has to be something that you start from the top and create a culture of change, but it's got to be guided by principles. It's got to be guided by a vision. It's got to be guided by milestones that are short term, midterm, and long term. Not just we're going to change for change's sake. Don't do that.
Yeah, some leaders do that too. That's too far in that direction.
Yeah, no, that I would call that no bueno. It's just one of those things. Cultural change, it doesn't come from trends. It's one of those things to where it's a catalyst that needs to have a bold effect, needs to have a bold ripple effect across the whole company. And it should give everybody a little frightness, but also a little bit of tingles to say, I'm excited, but I'm scared. You know what I mean? And that bold
Absolutely.
change of culture, that's really how you make progress in the business.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. So if you can help put a bow on all of this in terms of like final thoughts. How do you see all of these wrapping together into, creating a platform that will allow businesses to more rapidly scale?
Okay. Let's see. When you start to think about it, everybody wants rapid growth, right? Everybody wants to say, oh, I'm going to scale. I'm just going to do this thing, drop more money. We're going to get investment and we're going to add it towards this. No, scalable growth requires a really strong foundation. You know how they say in sports and a lot of different things, do the basics really well. In business, do the basics really well. If you can go through and look at your basics, right? That means it starts with having the right people, growth-oriented people that are adaptable, people that are purpose-driven, people that understand that your business evolves, right? Processes that create repeatable, flexible, efficient workflows that you can work with, data that really tells a story, right? Customers that are evolving with you, or you're evolving to the new needs of your customers. And, at the end of the day, it's all about that glue in the middle, that culture of change. If you can do all that, and with a strong foundation, you can create endless growth.
I
Endless
love
growth.
it.
And
You
that's what.
summarized that so well. Just
Thank
a little
you.
bow on top. You probably spent some time putting that into your doctoral thesis. So
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. I mean, a lot of it for me, part of my doctoral studies was presenting at conferences. So we had the option in my studies to be able to say, do you want to just write, or do you want to go present at conferences? And I'm naturally that guy who likes to go and randomly talk to people. Sorry.
perfect.
So they threw me up in front of conferences, go present your stuff, and that's part of your studies. So I get to go and talk to people about it, which is great.
Well, you're obviously very good at it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this background and for helping to dig into that. We're at 12:50 right now here in San Antonio time. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to open it up to audience QA. If there's any questions that we had come in, Tangela, we'll try to address them.
Wonderful. We've got quite a few questions, so I will go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
First one here, for firms looking to grow regionally or globally, what marketing foundation is critical before entering new markets with different client behaviors?
Okay, I'll answer this, and Lara, you can probably.
Oh, go ahead.
You need to have good data first, right? So Tangela, you said it's talking about locally and then growing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So with that, have good data that tells you what your growth needs are. Don't go in and speculate. Don't go in and just think, I think this. No, go in and do what's called an iterative testing model, right? Use your data to be able to dictate your next step. Think about what your end goal is, your 10 steps down is, but think about step one, having step number 10 in mind, but then do step two, which could be here or there, step three, step four, getting to step 10, but your path could be different. So when you're trying to build locally, do the foundational stuff really well, right? Get all your people really well. When you're trying to grow, what you want to do is you want to say that, for example, for my business, we are headquartered in San Antonio, but we are growing in Mexico and growing in Latin America. We have a strong foundation of best practices of data that we use here, right? For that, we want to use those repeated processes in Mexico. But the other thing too is that we have a culture here, and I know they have a distinct culture there. They can take elements of our culture and we provide that to them, but they make it their own using our foundation. Everything is based on that strong foundation.
Yeah, and you've described two really different cultures in that example. So we've also used the approach where if you have an audience, and we're talking about geography, is the question was largely based on geography. So if you're starting locally, understanding cultural differences that might exist in other locations, but also it's not just all about geography. Understanding the people in your audience within the geography and identifying them as a segment with their core characteristics. You may be able to identify those same types of people in other geographies. Geography may not be the deciding people. It may be behavioral. It might be technology use. It might, there's, you might be looking for, if you're B2B, you might be looking for businesses that, finding another geography where there's a lot of banking, so you found one pocket of it, you're going to go find another pocket of it. And that's just one random example.
Yeah. Replicate your hero customer in another region if you want to grow.
Yeah, exactly. And doing the research to find out. It shouldn't be like, oh, we're in San Antonio, so now let's go to Texas. And then we're going to, if you have trucks that have to move around, you may want to expand slowly and, draw your map based on how you're going to reach people. But if you're living in the digital world or doing something that doesn't have geographic restrictions for your service delivery, it might be more strategic to just identify those segments in other places.
Correct.
I don't know if that's helpful or answered that question, but Tangela, you've got some more?
I probably did. I probably went on a tangent.
No worries.
My
Thank
brain's
you.
like that.
Sure. So our next question is, as someone in the professional services space, I'm curious to know, how can firms effectively leverage thought leadership to build trust and convert interest into qualified leads, especially in a crowded consultancy and compliance-driven market?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's two approaches in my mind. You can either have the foundational elements really well, or you can be really innovative and be thought-provoking. The most thought-provoking, innovative person that I know of our generation is Simon Sinek. When he came out with the Golden Circle and the Start with Why, that blew my mind, right? And I still show that same 18-minute TED Talk to every single one of my classes because it's extremely thought-provoking. I'll tell you this, if you're not Simon Sinek, don't try to be him because you'll look foolish. Do the basics really well. A lot of people aren't really at that advanced level, right? A lot of people need help with the basics. If you want to be a great thought leader, be able to explain the basics really, really well, right? And help people build strong foundations. That's my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thought leadership, we've helped develop thought leaders within businesses. There are so many different approaches to it. Are you better at writing or are you better at speaking? Are you comfortable with social media? How strong is your existing personal brand in the audience that you're in? The market that you're serving. If you already have lots of great awareness and you're trying to expand geographically, or you're trying to just deepen that, there's the strategies are all going to be contingent upon what it is you have to offer, who you're trying to reach, the channels that you can use to reach them. So I'm not a fan of trying to make every thought leader an internet star. It seems to be like the current trend. And yeah, not everybody is going to be great at that or comfortable with it. So some people are better at speaking or presenting in person. Some people are better at writing. Some, thinking through what each individual thought leader's superpower is, and then finding a way to channel that is important.
I will add this, Laura, is be authentic.
Oh, 100%.
No matter what it is, be your authentic self, because the last thing you want to do is copy what somebody else keeps saying or use other people's information or when somebody meets you out at a conference or somewhere in public and they talk to you and they're like, you have absolutely no clue what you're talking about. It seems like you're reading from a script this entire time. You're not authentic. So it's be your authentic self. If you're bubbly, be bubbly, right? If you're really good on camera, be good on camera. If you're not good at tweeting, don't tweet, right? Stay off of it. The things that you're really good at. I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm terrible at.
Yeah.
So I'll stay in my lane.
Tangela, do we have time for a couple more?
We do. So I've got a question regarding technology. You mentioned a lot about data, and so one of our attendees is interested in knowing if you can provide some recommendations on tools to use for this data management.
Laura, that's you more.
Yeah, I would probably need to ask some follow-up questions to know. You had mentioned Adobe Analytics, there's Google Analytics, agency analytics is something that ties in with Google Analytics. It's going to depend on where your data already resides. You're going to need to find tools that integrate or work with that. I'm not the hugest fan of just using Zapier to connect everything. Like personally, I think looking for that's the best answer that I have is find out where your data is currently residing and then look for, it depends. And it also depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If we're talking dashboards, you can Google marketing dashboards that work with QuickBooks and Salesforce or whatever, right? Like, so looking for systems that glue together what you already have.
Yeah, tools that actually talk to the other
Yes.
tools using, and tools that'll scale with you.
Yeah. Yeah, you may find that you need to replace them like that. You may try to go find that and just recognize like, hey, we used this weird little SaaS platform as a CRM, and it's just not going to get us to the next step. So you may have a migration task in front of you before you can get to the next level, which is never fun, but sometimes necessary. And if that's a huge roadblock, you got to put that project on the slate sooner rather than later.
Touche.
Love it. Well, we're going to take one more and then turn it back over to you to close out.
Okay.
And so what are some warning signs that my business isn't ready to scale yet, even if sales are increasing?
So even if your sales are increasing, I will not say that's always going to be the thing. Sometimes your sales could increase because it's seasonality. It could be because of a market trend. It could be from a campaign that went out, or it could be some anomaly, or it could just be you're really good at your job and it's always growing, whatever, right? But it's one of those things. That's a great question.
I always recommend using like the customer journey, which is similar to a sales funnel, and trying to map out like, is it your awareness is something's going right? Like if it's got to start with awareness and then move to consideration, which might be looking at, your website, you're doing something to advertise, to get out there in front of them or to create that awareness. Is that working well? Is the consideration working well? Like there's an intermediary step, usually a website or something digital, or maybe it's events or in-person things, point of sale. And then you move to close. Is your sales team really awesome? Where are the things going well? And where are you just getting lucky? Because sometimes we see that, and if it's one killer salesperson that's a hunter that's doing the work to close the whole funnel, that may not be something that you can replicate easily. But you really have to analyze, this gets back to data. You have to analyze your own data and understand which
audit yourself.
Audit yourself, figure out where things are going well, where you think there's going to be sticking points. We did an activity with our team and we called it the 10X, activity. What would it take if we were 10 times bigger than we are right now? What would break?
Yeah, another thing to do is I like to look at what's indirect and direct. I'm a huge fan of that. Look at the things that have direct impact on your ROI, direct impact on your funnel, direct impact on your conversion, and look at the indirect things. Right. The best example is you push out this campaign and you have all this traffic to your site, but nobody converted into sales. Yeah. But all of a sudden your newsletter subscription tripled. Well, that's an indirect effect, but it helped the wrong way. Yeah.
Or it's a longer term play.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, we are out of time. I think we have some more questions, and I hope we got through most of them. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Jeremy, for sharing your stories and experience and time. Our next live stream will be on Thursday, August 28th at noon with Belinda Goodmanson. She is Robot Creative's creative director, and we are going to be discussing big branding for small businesses. So that's already live and open for registration on Eventbrite if you want to save your seat there now. You can follow us on Eventbrite for upcoming episode notifications. And we now have past episodes available on YouTube. So we're going to be adding additional streaming platforms soon, but the best way to stay in touch with us is to join our mailing list. So if you go to robotcreative.com, we have an email sign up right on the homepage of our website. And that's going to give you access to more than just the CMO Scoop. So we have articles and tools that are not available through Eventbrite. So we'll put the link to that in the chat as well. And hope that we can see you again on a future episode. And thank you all for joining this live recording of the CMO Scoop.